Tushar Pradhan is the Chief Investment Officer at HSBC Global Asset Management Company, HSBC India Limited, Mumbai. He is responsible for all investment activities and investment strategy. He's an MBA from the Barney School of Business and Public Administration, University of Hartford, Connecticut, USA, and has worked in various organizations in the States as well as in India. He's a prominent spokesperson and is often called upon to give his views on the Indian equity and fixed income markets. He's the zonal coordinator of the Heartfulness Institute in Mumbai. Heartfulness Institute is one of the prominent organization which is helping people deal with their stress using meditation and a lot of other techniques. He's keenly interested in spirituality and gives lectures and conducts seminars on the importance of leading a balanced existence and the need for incorporating a spiritual practice in one's life. So, on the occasion of World Stress Day, we are pleased to present this special episode. And today, let us learn more about Tushar Pradhan's journey with Heartfulness Organization and also get his insights on importance of meditation for dealing with stress. Hello. Hi there. Welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series, The Guiding Voice for a Better Future. This podcast is to help professional students, IT employees, and entrepreneurs to shape their careers. In case if you have tuned in for the first time, you have missed a lot of stuff. But don't worry, all our episodes are available on your favorite podcast listening platforms and also on YouTube. And not only that, we are going to start our blog series, TGV Blogs, on LinkedIn as well as on our website, wherein we are going to publish the conversation that we have had with over 150 guests in the span of last 18 months. And we request you to go through them and also share with your friend and also colleagues for whom you care for. Also, if you haven't rated our podcast on Apple, request you to provide your rating and leave a positive review, because every rating and review will motivate us to bring in more and more useful content to you. This is your host Navin Samala, and I have about 18 years of rich and diverse experience in the IT industry. In every episode, we interact with industry experts or thought leaders or academicians or entrepreneurs or coaches across the globe to drive some insightful conversations that will help each one of you learn great things. Also, we share an interesting trivia or a fun fact towards the end. So stay tuned till the end, and you'll acquire more knowledge per every minute by listening to TGV than any other podcast in this space. Thank you so much for tuning in. So, folks, when we talk about this meditation, it is a practice which is thought to be around 2,600 years old. Meditation is not a religion. It can be practiced by anyone. And as per the recent stats, the global wellness industry is currently valued about 4.5 trillion US dollars. In fact, general wellness is the number one reason why people take up meditation. Meditation can change our brain patterns to improve the memory and concentration. And also, if you want to slow the aging process, meditation is proven to help. Research also shows that meditation can help to relieve lower back pain, which is prevalent amongst most of us because of long hours of sitting in the office. And these days, because of work from home, wherein people are continuously sitting at their desk for more than 8 hours. So, folks, given that the importance of meditation, we would like to cover this topic as it is one of the greatest stress busters. So, on this World Stress Day, we are pleased to discuss this topic with Tushar Pradhan, who happens to be the zonal coordinator for Heartfulness. So, Tushar, welcome to TGV. In fact, it is our pleasure to have you part of the Guiding Voice podcast series.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be here.
So, pleasure hosting you, and thanks again for being part of TGV's journey in shaping the lives and careers of millions across the globe. So, let me get started with the first question, Tushar. Can we talk very briefly about your journey with this Heartfulness Institute and top 3 things that have helped you so far?
No, wonderful to hear about your program as well. To begin with, I think my journey began about 20 years ago. So that itself gives you some idea about how long I've been with Heartfulness. And as anything in life, I think once someone accepts that as a lifestyle, it doesn't really become anything extra. So I think the first thing I would like to emphasize, and you mentioned some benefits of meditation also, that people really read about it these days, are willing to practice or even try various types. But what one lacks is basically the understanding that it is a practice. So people treat it like, going to the gym and maybe, using it for a while, but that actually doesn't give you as much benefit as it can. So my journey began actually at a very strange way. I was, a young MBA in the US, really at a loss to understand what life was all about. And while success supposedly came very early to me, that itself was a point of stress and crisis for me because I didn't know what to do in life after that. Because all I wanted to do was to become an MBA in the US and work on Wall Street. And here I was, 24 years of age, with a card which said 95 Wall Street and so company. And I said, well, now what? There doesn't seem to be anything else to do here. So I was really at a situation where I didn't know what to answer. So I think heartfulness came into my life quite some time after that, after I first asked that question, when I came back to India and so on and so forth. But it somehow came into my life. And what was the biggest advantage I would think heartfulness gave me was that there is help. This is such a wonderful aspect of heartfulness, that there is always someone out there who can give you a meditation free of charge at your convenience. This is something so dramatic and so wonderful because it's so unique to us. I mean, we can say, okay, general program, what heartfulness means, but what does it mean to me? The biggest thing was that someone was available to provide me this experience. The second thing, I think, it made very clear to me that it is not about books. It's not about knowledge. It is about experience. And I think what I really learned is that unless you experience, whether it's an emotion, whether it's a feeling, whatever you experience, it is not real. It is somebody else's experience. So I think the second thing I got from heartfulness is trust one's experience, trust one's feeling, and try to rely on the feeling rather than the thinking. Because we are all, technologically advanced people. We look at logic and we generally are associated only with the mind. But we forget the heart. And I think the best thing that came out of my practice in heartfulness, the second part I would say, that it taught me how to relate to the heart. What are the emotions and feelings and how do I relate them to my knowledge? And the third thing I would say, and you've just asked for three, I can go on. But the three things, as I mentioned, the third thing, most importantly, I feel, is a sense of community. I just realized that, this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam that we talk about in Sanskrit for the whole world, that the whole world is a family. I think we are not aware of it, or we just mouth it, we don't speak it, we don't really mean it. But through the practice, I realized that, we are all really connected. Whoever we are, wherever we are, whenever we get in touch with someone, the feeling that it gets generated through the heartfulness practice, you can really sense a lot more. It is about your ability to communicate. And I think what heartfulness has given me is this tremendous ability to connect with people. And I think, again, as I said, it's a personal experience. I'm not saying, I'm not advertising it as about the general feature of heartfulness. But again, you have to understand that each one of us will uncover some secret within themselves when they follow this practice. And that will be unique to each of the practitioners, what it blossoms into for each of us. So those are the three things I would think, at least I can remember, which are very interesting for me.
That's very nice. In fact, I can share my experience. Of course, I'm not as seasoned as you. Like, I had a very brief experience of attending about 3 to 4 sessions, but I'm able to connect to all the three things that you have mentioned. One is about experiencing it, because you sit amongst the community of people who are practicing it, and automatically we get into that mode, right? And wherein we start relating things to the heart and all. And at the same time, I also sense that belongingness of community, and wherein you get in touch with like-minded people. Thank you so much for sharing those amazing insights. So icing on the cake here is this entire program is free, right? So I think people can get a benefit out of it. And in fact, I'm contemplating to join this and take it seriously, because one thing that resonated with me when you mentioned about making something part of your lifestyle, you don't treat it as an overhead. In fact, I'll tell some live example. Recently, like, I thought I'm a fitness freak. Like, I work out every day. Like, it's been past 23 years onwards. Like, since my +1 onwards, I've been waking up early and work out for about an hour or 1.5 hours. And recently, because of stagnant lifestyle after this pandemic and all, I felt I'm putting on some lot of weight and all. And I started cycling. And it's been 2.5 months continuously, wherein I'm able to cycle at least for 30 minutes, or maximum I can go up to 2 hours. But again, that has become part of my lifestyle. So I don't think like it is an overhead. So I think that point can definitely trigger someone to take up any of the activity that is going to help us in a positive way. So thank you for that amazing insight, Tushar. So with that, let's talk about the core of today's topic, meditation. great stress busters. So how can this benefit people who are dealing with stress? Because from your own experience, like soon after you completed your MBA, you have scaled up the corporate ladder very quickly, and that actually automatically garners a lot of stress, and with that high demanding job and all. And how did it help you as well personally in terms of dealing with and coping up with the stress? Can you share the benefits?
Yeah, I think again, I can go on and on about this because that is my personal experience about how it all came together. So let me talk a little bit about stress, though I'm not a medical professional. So it's again gathered knowledge, just like all of us who go to Google. But I was very fascinated by the fact that stress is not something which is harmful. It is a natural reaction of the body to a flight or fight response that ancient cavemen, ever since we were, developing as human beings, we imbibed that sort of experience inside of us. And that stress response is actually something which will save our life. At least it would have saved our life when we were cavemen. It actually does a lot of strange things inside of our body. So when there is a perception of threat, that something or some animal is going to come and kill me or eat me, it produces adrenaline inside of it. There is a gland which will secrete that sort of substance inside. It will pump my blood faster. My pulse will go faster. My blood will shoot through my extremities. Because if I have to run, or even if I have to fight, I have to transfer the energy to my extremities, either to run or to fight. So that's what stress is basically is. So that is a response of the body to a perceived threat. Now you can imagine that in the cave period, you would either avoid the animal and save yourself or get eaten up. So there was not that much of a difference between the start of the threat and the end of it. I mean, you would climb a tree or you would hide and it would pass. Now the thing to remember is that the stress at that time, the body generated all those chemicals, cortisol, adrenaline, was there for some time. How much time would it be? 2 hours, 3 hours max. But it won't ever go beyond that because that is, at the end of the day, you come out of that threat. And that is what is programmed in our human bodies and brains. You cannot avoid it. So when people say, how do I avoid stress? Do I meditate? No, it's never going to go away. So first thing I wanted to establish is that stress is a response that the body does to help us to really, kind of cover a situation. Now, what has happened to us now and how stress actually has gone beyond that situation is that our threat perception is lasting beyond 2-3 hours. Sometimes these threat perception can last for days or even weeks. So, for example, if you have a project to complete, and I'm sure all of our IT brothers and sisters will understand that whenever there's a project and a deadline, the stress starts from there. So all my adrenaline, all my cortisol has started to build into my bloodstream. Just at the fact, because I may or may not be prepared, I may rely on a third team member who's not available, my stress is going up. So my threat perception is now lasting for many days. And with all of these chemicals inside of my body, obviously, they're going to have an impact on my organ. So where stress becomes harmful is our inability to control this response. It's a natural response, but I cannot control it after a certain point. And then that starts to put pressure on my bloodstream. My blood pressure goes up, and then long hours of high blood pressure will lead to all that organ problems, as we all know. So the whole point I'm trying to make is that these techniques of stress relief should concentrate on understanding what is the base cause for your stress. Because if you do not understand that, you will try, like for example, when blood goes to your extremities, many people say, okay, go for a walk. That's fine. You generally spend that energy and slowly those chemicals come down and say within an hour's time, you're feeling fresh. You're okay. But what happens once you come back? It's not as if the bosses and the deadlines are going to go away. So the stress builds up again. So are you practical enough to say that my stress buster is cycling or walking, which solves my problem? No, it is unlikely to do so. So in a sense, what I'm trying to say is that it is very important for us to understand that whatever we approach from a stress relief perspective should really address the basic problem. Or if it does not address the basic problem, it's just going to be very, very temporary. So, and again, I'm saying that heartfulness or meditation is not going to be the relief here. It is to understand what heartfulness or meditation does to you. It creates an environment of peace and calm for at least some part of the day, which if you're able to retain, you start to become a lot more clear-headed. In fact, a lot better in terms of understanding the situation. And the root cause of the stress is also likely to come down. So, for example, if I know that the reason I get stressed out is because, this team member who is always asking me things which I cannot answer, or, generally creates a nuisance. Now, through meditation, through introspection, I understand that it's not a project. It's not my ability to deliver. It is something else which causes it. So, if through meditation I'm able to introspect and that comes out during my meditation, I'm able to fix it. So stress actually becomes a lot larger as a context for me to address rather than just saying, oh, my blood pressure has gone up. Can I do something to reduce it? It's not like that. And I think that is the more important thing about how stress affects. And I think as we go along, and as I look at how stress actually does build up, is that it has to become a lifestyle, just as you mentioned before. So if I'm meditative, which means that if I carry my condition of meditation for a long time in the day, I naturally become less stressful. See how it's logical? That at any point of time, if I remember the condition of meditation, sitting in a team where suddenly there is some kind of acrimony, difference of opinion hits up, all I can do is like, look, okay, I can take a step back. I can remember the condition and bring myself into that clearer headed situation. And that's a technique. That's not something which I can, learn overnight. So that's why these 20 years, it's not as if I'm able to do that automatically today, but at least I know the technique. And people say, oh, how do you remember the thing? So I'll just give a simple example. When we go to our native village or something like that, the smells of that place reminds us of the times. You almost can feel the friends around you at that time, weather and everything just starts to come back. You eat an apple or a mango, it triggers a lot of response in our memories. And we almost remember the time that we either had a wonderful experience earlier or something like that. So it is possible that your memory can trigger a situation in yourself. So I think meditation really in that sense, helps to address that stress issue, not just on a temporary basis that you take your mind off a little bit, but also a very holistic way where you start to understand the causes of it. So a very long answer to your short question, but I thought it was necessary to bring that up.
Absolutely. I think very insightful. I think you shared your own experience, and it takes time. That's what I could understand, because when in case if we don't make it as a lifestyle, probably it might be difficult for us to get to a level where you are at this moment. But covered a lot of great aspects, like talking about the history, and this has been part and parcel of our life. But now that with the advancement of technology and everybody is speaking about the stress as a bad thing, but I concur with you saying that without stress, again, we will not have that zeal to move forward as well, because stress can be treated positively as well. And thank you for sharing your insights in terms of how meditation can help in dealing with it. And it's not a short-term process, but over a period of time, we will be able to master it and understand the holistic picture and be able to deal with the situations very well. So here comes my next question, Tushar. Again, this is a dumb question for sure. Who should do meditation? Like, is it only for IT professionals or somebody who is doing some sort of stress-prone jobs? And second part is like, when should someone start? Like, can I start it as a child? Like, let's assume if you have children at home, maybe 5 years or above. Likewise, like, what are your thoughts around that?
No, that's an interesting question because, first of all, I will state that meditation is actually not only a choice now, but I think it should be a necessity. Because if you look back in the earlier times, like, our parents or their parents, because you're so young, I don't want to miss that. But I can remember my dad. He would come back at 6 o'clock. And I don't think he ever brought any work. So it was like office is office, work is work. And there was a very nice way of looking at the whole thing in such a way that you never really had to address it in any way. There were other issues, pressures, fine, but never work. So that was simpler time. These days, as you mentioned, the 24/7 devices, you will have work come to you in the most intimate of situations that you are having, right? So it is inescapable. So we need a lot more protection now than what we had even some time back. So, and if you go back to the time that the rishis and the seers in India used to meditate, at that time most of the people, I'm sure, they didn't have all of the stresses that we have. Of course, they will have some family pressures and all that, but they did not have this manic, sort of lifestyle that we do. They had a pastoral life. They had things to go out in the fields, relax, you did not really require meditation. You needed meditation at that time to go higher as a spiritual aspirant. Because now the mundane life is not enough for you, and that is how they chose meditation. For us, meditation is essentially just to survive, just to kind of come to become a normal human being. I think it is absolutely essential for us to do. So I would say not only IT, anybody. Typically, heartfulness is offered to meditation as a choice above 15 years, because essentially what it means is that you should have an idea about what this is all about. And I can share a personal example that when I began meditation when I was about 30 years old, all the members of my family kind of gave up on me because I just kind of got married, and people were worried that I had something wrong in my mind. And many uncles would come kindly and tell me, look, this is something that you do after you retire, not when you're just beginning your career, or not especially when you're beginning your marriage. So I think there was a lot of disconnect in a lot of people's minds about what meditation really is. So I think as long as you know what you want to do, if you're 15 years of age and above, I think it's good enough to start. Anything before that, I think you're trying to tell the child what, because he's not able to or she's not able to make their own decision about this. It should be a willingness on one's own. So you will argue that a lot of people now have a lot more opinions and they are a lot more collected than before. So probably in many years ago in our system we used to introduce meditation after 18 years, but slowly having realized that today's children, today's teenagers are a lot better understood about that situation, and they have experienced stress a lot earlier in life. I think we can offer them as soon as 15 years plus. So that is what our method of meditation prescribes. Though I must say that relaxation of some sort, whether it's by prayer or by way of some technique, that can be introduced even in, like for example, we have a relaxation technique we've introduced in our schools. And just before the start of the school session, you run this relaxation text, and even a teacher can do it, another student can do it for their own students. A wonderful way of connect also. And for about 10 minutes, people can get relaxed. So those things are possible. So many people sometimes mix these words, relaxation, meditation, it's the same thing. Meditation is a lot more deeper. That comes much later. But I'm saying that even students going into the first standard, I think they can do this relaxation by themselves. So I just want to make a distinction that when we get into the deeper aspects of meditation and meditate for longer, that should at least come when people are aware of what they're doing. But prior to that, they can try this heartfulness with relaxation technique, which is really open to absolutely any age except for, of course, very, very young children. So that's the answer.
It actually reminded me of my school days. I come from this Sri Aurobindo Mission School. I studied in my hometown, which is about 80 kilometers from here. And right from first class onwards, we used to have this meditation in the school. Like before the classes begin and after the classes conclude, it was about 3 minutes and all. But at that time, since we are all young, we didn't take that thing so seriously. Now that you have mentioned about one should have that particular awareness and be willing, right? I think that's a good thing wherein, because if it comes intrinsic by themselves, within themselves, then they will be more serious about it. All right. So thank you for that. Again, amazing tip. So with that, let me move on to my next question. Now let's talk about this Heartfulness Institute. Because earlier when I was part of those sessions, it was called as Sri Ramchandra Mission. Right now, it's been rebranded as Heartfulness. And I think a lot of good stuff is happening around. And how can someone join? Probably you can share those details as well. Of course, I'll be publishing the website details in the show notes. In addition to that, if there are any other precursor things you want to cover, it would be great.
No, thanks for asking. And this is I would say, an organization which began in 1945. So it's not a new thing. However, as you know that if you were to offer meditation to a group of people in 1945, and you were to offer a group of meditation in the year 2021, obviously the context will change. People have association with names. So as you mentioned, Sri Ramchandra Mission. So the first thing that people ask when they hear that is, oh, it's something to do with Ram. And, then another track goes on. And these are the impressions and the connections we carry. So people might tend to just say, oh, this is not for me, even before even they know what it is all about. So I think some years ago, I think in 2015, our guide, Sri Kamlesh Daji, as we call him, Kamlesh Patelji, he realized that, look, we've got a wonderful method. We've got a wonderful way of helping people meditate. It's absolutely free of charge. Already, about 100 countries in that time already have these centers which offer this. But most of it is not known. People will not generally gravitate towards something like this. So let's do something. Let's do something to help it make a lot more easily accepted. I think that was the reason why we coined this wonderful word called heartfulness, because as you have experienced it yourself, heartfulness is meditation on the heart. And essentially the heart is the center of, the entire human body, generally we associate it with life. And there are so many secrets in the heart which we uncover as we meditate. So we said, let's call it heartfulness. And that itself was a trigger for us to kind of be out there. And initially we were, only asking and helping people who were seeking and asking. And from there, we changed that attitude to saying, look, we've got something great to offer, just try it. And I think that is where the change came. It is available to anybody practically, anywhere in the world. We have a website, I'm sure as you will publish those details, www.heartfulness.org, which gives a very simple practice and few techniques which are already there on the web. And it begins with you getting in touch with a personal trainer. For example, I am a trainer. So if someone approaches me, I take some time for that person and I help them get introduced to the method. So it is a personal connect. It is almost one-to-one at every time that you enter. And you could be in Antwerp, you can be in London, you can be in Russia, you can be in Delhi, you can be in Chennai, wherever. It does not matter. So at that time, there were practitioners and people who were helping trainers in every possible city that you can think of. Of course, we couldn't cover everything, but there was someone there most of the time in these connections. Even at that time in phones, we would get in touch with people and then go to their homes and stuff. Now, a whole new world is open because you can download our app, which is the Hearts app, or the newer app, which is for even newer people. You can just download the app and then just request for this meditation sitting. And a trainer gets alerted somewhere in the world. You can, like, for example, my son is an IT guy himself. He wakes up at 2 o'clock and he has a meeting. I always get worried about that. So suppose the meeting is stressful and he says, look, I need a sitting, I need a meditation session. I mean, he can, if he wants to ask someone in Bombay, very likely that he's not going to get one. But once he enters the app, someone somewhere in the world, the trainer is there on the app on the other side, and he's willing to give him the sitting. And likewise, these time zones are absolutely 24/7. So this is the unique feature which we now have brought in. So if you ask me what has been the change in our method and our manner in which the thing remains the same. The offering is the same, whether it was in the earlier package or it is in this new package, it is the same. It is just a lot more accessible. It is a lot more, I would say, tech savvy, because apps didn't exist at that time and you had to call someone and go to someone's house to get a sitting. You can now do this sitting in your home. And of course, there are these sessions and there are trainings. And of course, it's not as if you begin and that's the end of it. Beginning is really a beginning. I'm sure if you may have also experienced that there are levels of our consciousness that they expand. So for example, through meditation, I become a lot quieter than before. What have I just experienced? I've experienced that I've become a better person. Now, is there any limit to this expansion? Literally, there's no. So the more and more you start to expand your consciousness, there is a need to understand these changes. So we have ongoing programs, trainings, which at every level, people are able to help you understand your newer consciousness. How do you deal with now the world that you see it a lot differently? You're reacting differently. You're becoming a more responsible person. What do you do now? These are issues which carry us throughout the journey. And what is the biggest advantage is that there is a guy who at any point of time, either on an email, is available to answer your question. He conducts these sessions on a regular basis every Sunday. So at 9 o'clock in India time, there is a live session where he actually transmits essence throughout the world for whoever is sitting anywhere in the world for that. So, these are the kinds of things. And of course, there are local centers which do various other programs, so on and so forth. But that's in brief, what this is all about. It is at the end of the day, you can call it an NGO. It's a not-for-profit. We don't really charge for any of these things, and literally open for any and every citizen of the world.
That is stunning fact, actually. Like you spoke about the app and the trainer is available at the fingertips at any point in time. So I think there is no excuse for someone not to start. Right. Thanks for sharing those details. In fact, it is very insightful. And with that, let me move on to my next question, Tushar. You were in a demanding job right from the beginning, because when you mentioned about your intro, like right now you're again serving as a chief investment officer, so which is kind of dealing with a lot of work pressure and all. So how do you cope up with stress? Especially, are there any techniques that you practice out of your 20 plus years of association with the meditation?
Let me tell you a secret. I don't cope. It's easy for anyone to say that I can cope, but no, it is not possible. Because I will tell you that even if my job, say for example, I always used to read, big people's biographies. When I read Churchill's biography, I said, boss, his day job was fighting the Germans for 5 years as the head of, the Allied forces. It's not a simple job. So I don't think we can identify with someone else's job. Okay, so first thing I want to clarify that what I do and do, or that's not really applicable to everybody else. Everyone has to realize that we all have our individual set of crisis points. And I have to address that. So someone using a technique to help him get out of that is not going to be helpful to me. So what is very critical to understand is that this concept about a glass of water. Now, if I tell you, does the glass of water actually is heavy? Argue no. It's, I can easily lift it with my left hand. So how heavy is it? But if I say, okay, hold this glass of water for the next 20 hours, I don't think it will last beyond a half hour or something like that. So what has happened is that your ability to carry that stress, has physical limitations. You cannot do it beyond a point. So what can I do? Can I put the glass cup down? That is the first thing that you have to remember. Can I put the glass cup down? In other words, if something which is stressing me out, can I have the ability to think of something else? Now you'll remember that our manic minds now are unable to do that. They're unable to do that. We get distracted. For example, I can play a game and win. But the minute the game is over, I go back. And sometimes, even if this problem is so acute in my mind that I cannot even go to the game because it is bothering me so. So meditation, if at all, I think gives you the tools to understand that, yes, you can set the glass cup down. And there are techniques. For example, we have a mental cleaning technique. And essentially, we start to understand where thoughts come from, how to, evaluate them, how to get rid of them, how to ignore them. And over time, as a practice, this is how and what you do. So in a sense, it is not about my way of, suggesting that this is the way to get out of stress, but just to realize that you need to have the ability to set them. Whichever technique you use, whether it is, going out for a game of tennis or painting or whatever it is that relaxes your mind, you shift your attention. In my job, I think, we all know how stressful it is because all I have to do is to deal with information. It's pouring into from all sorts of levels, and I have to react all the time. Now, I will think about this, that the longer time that I spend in my job, I realize everything doesn't need to be attended. But if you watch CNBC, that is not the impression they give you. That every minute there is breaking news, and every minute as if the World War III is started, and you have to do something about it. So now this ability to keep a distance between what's happening and what I have to do starts to build in. And over time as well, if I have to relate it to normal activities outside of my job, people deal with politics, people deal with people's impressions, people deal with our impressions of others, so on and so forth. I think there are techniques within Heartfulness which are able to reduce these impressions and actually not have some sort of preconceived notion about a situation. I think that is very good. I think that is the stress that a lot of us get all the time. And no one comes out with an answer for that. You cannot get rid of it. You always have made that impression and now you are bound. And I feel that, that has been the largest cause for my stress. Even if I, compare my stressful real day job, but I have to interact with people. I have to find people who agree with me. Many times they don't. Especially when I publish my NAV at the end of the day, people hate me because, oh, you've done so badly versus others. And someone will voice their opinion. And obviously, I'm not someone who is an exalted ego. So I realize, look, I risk of, doing a delivery which is not good enough, it hurts me. So all of these emotions are part of anybody's job. So someone says, look, you've done a terrible job. how am I going to deal with this? That's not stress on the regular kind where I say, oh, I don't think about it right now. I continue to think about it. So I think it's a lot more larger in context. And I think the whole system of heartfulness really takes you through. And I think that is the key to what I would suggest to people about addressing this issue. And be serious about it. It's going to cause a lot of pain for you in the future. Think about how to deal with this and adopt a method which helps you relax, at least at some time, and over time become relaxed.
Fantastic. I think this was an enlightening conversation so far. Let me move on to my next question, Tushar. Why do you believe meditation is an important tool for maintaining good mental health? Because today we are done with the wave 2, and there are speculations about wave 3 kicking in, and people might again undergo this tough situation of cities and towns and villages getting under lockdown and all. So what is your take on that?
I think meditation, the way that we actually practice in heartfulness, is something to do with the mind. And it is something to do with regulating our mind so that we are able to not control it, but move it at least. So suppose, remember, if you're holding a hose of water, you are not able to stop it because it is just going. It's like mind, it will always continue to keep thinking. But I can control the direction. I can put it in front of a fire rather than, just wasting it out. Those things are something that we need to learn. And those are the techniques that we learn in art. It's about how to divert our mind. And once the diversion is done, how to stay there. And of course, after some time, you'll lose that and you'll come back again. But a lot better than if you're not able to control your mind or even regulate it. So I think the biggest concern that we have today is that mentally we've lost it. I asked a simple question to younger generation, and I look at my son and I say, can you for 1 minute just keep your phone away? Many people are unable to. Test it for yourself. You do some activity, and within like a minute of some free time, you pick up. Now, when our minds are now, and there's dopamine, right? So every time that something nice happens or a notification comes, hitting, there's a lot of dosage of dopamine going in my mind, making me feel nice. Now I'm getting addicted to that, to that extent that till I get it back, I might feel very, very constrained. This is a big, serious mental health issue across the world. And I think this is a serious issue that we all need to address. And meditation is not going to solve it. Our own habits, our own reactions to things, and our ability to keep these distractions away are going to be absolutely critical for us to be able to deal with the mental health epidemic, which is likely. Meditation is a step where you start learning that, look, after some time, give yourself, who is telling you this? If your lifestyle is such that you automatically give yourself some mental rest, wonderful. But many times you are on 24/7. Right? So there is absolutely no way to get rid of that situation. And that is the reason why mental health will become a bigger crisis. And I worry about the younger children who now, because of the pandemic, unfortunately have to be on screens all the day. And when the relief is that go from one screen to the other. They don't go out, they don't interact with people. These are the seeds of a pretty dramatic mental health issue which we will see maybe 10-15 years from now. So I'm dead serious about this. It's really something that we need to do.
I think you brought in a right fact. People are not able to be there without the devices for even a minute, and the dopamine factor is adding to it. And I love that example of carrying the hose pipe. You can use it to dose the fire, or you can use it for something else. It's all about regulating the thoughts. This has been incredible conversation so far. And Tushar, I would like to spice this up and take the episode to a new high by asking you a few interesting rapid fire questions wherein you can answer them crisply, like 2 to 3 words or maybe maximum 1 phrase. If you are okay, let's get started.
Sure.
All right. Thank you for volunteering. With that, let me fire the first bullet out of the rapid fire just to know the other side of Tushar. Would you like to time travel to past or future?
Future, definitely.
Okay. All right. Moving on. What are the 3 things that you carry with you always?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. I carry my thoughts and impressions all the time. I carry my attitude and I carry my memories. These are the 3 things I keep.
Simply amazing, actually. People would normally get into mode of physical attributes or physical things, and I loved your answer. Thank you. Thank you for such an amazing insight. With that, let me move on to the next one. So, do you believe in the next life?
Absolutely. I mean, that is the critical thing about how we should behave today. Because unless there is a second life, it doesn't matter, right? So I absolutely believe that there is definitely another life, and the one after, and the one after. And we've had countless lives before us. So I absolutely believe it.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on, what has been a question on your mind for which you never got an answer for?
I think the secret there is I want to know what women think. I don't think in this lifetime I will get there.
All right. So with that, let me move on to the last question for the rapid fire. Tushar, what is one message that you would like to give to your own younger version?
Yeah, I think that's another wonderful question. I think what I will tell him is relax. I used to be a very, very anxious kid, an anxious teen, and a very anxious new adult. I was always worried about what was going to happen. I was comparing myself with so many other people. I'll just tell him that there's a plan there. Don't worry. We're going through this for some reason. So I would definitely be there.
Very scintillating and thought-provoking rapid fire. Thank you for amazing words of wisdom, I would say. So with that, let me flip back to the mainstream and ask you one question which is not related to the meditation and heartfulness, but from your global CXO hat. What will be your one piece of advice to those aspiring to make big in their careers?
One thing I will share, which I don't think is more understood or appreciated, and that goes back to the Bhagavad Gita, where there is a concept of Swadharma. Today, what happens is you look at Mark Zuckerberg, you look at Jeff Bezos, and we all want to be like it. The young guys, I want to be a startup and a billionaire before the next day, right? So nothing wrong in that. I think it's good to aspire. But I think it's very important for us to realize that we need to know a little bit about ourselves. I think all of these individuals who have done very well are individuals. We cannot become them. So even if you read Steve Jobs and his character, I don't think I like his character very much. A very abrasive boss, all of that, what is written about him, not really very nice. But that came naturally to him. That's natural. That is what his Swadharma was. It didn't matter to him that people threw him out of his own business. He went through a lot of trouble, but that's his story. There is no ideal way to reach where he reached eventually. So if I were to say, what is the advice that a young Steve Jobs would get? Probably no advice, because that advice would miss his mind and he would say, no, I have to do this instead of that. But I think what I would suggest to the younger generation is to find yours. Find what you are. What is your role in society? What should you contribute? And I think once that contribution starts, then the rest of the things become important. But not the method. The method will evolve. But essentially, it is very important for us to understand our place in this world, in our society. What do I plan to do? And be absolutely brave about that. And say, let's take that up and say, okay, this is a problem I'd like to solve. How do I solve it? Do I become an engineer to solve it? Oh, if I'm already an engineer, does my company, which is currently doing this, solve that problem? Take that up. Be brave. I think that is really something what we need to do. Otherwise, people say, oh no, I've got a nice, comfortable job now. That problem I'll come to it later. Now you've lost that. You've lost your dharma. That was something which was burning in your mind. You should have done something about it. You will be very satisfied. Many people associate success with money. I shudder to tell you all the people who have money about their mental space and what they are undergoing. So that's, I must say, that not a comfortable position unless that is yours for them. Unless you are comfortable with it, it's not something which you want to aspire for. So all I'm saying is that find your dharma, whatever that is, and spend time doing that when you're younger, when you're starting off, and eventually your life will become
simply marvelous. I think we need to know more about ourselves before trying to imagine ourselves in the big shoes. Having a role model is good, but they might have their own self. I think, very thought-provoking. So Tushar, this has been a fantastic conversation today, and it was very nice to hear your insights about the importance of meditation for dealing with stress. Thank you so much again for being part of the show, and thanks for being part of TGV's journey in shaping the careers and lives of millions across the globe. And I'm sure we are going to have many more conversations in our series. Wishing to have you again come back to TJV. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time, and really wonderful to be invited here. If there is anything I can do later on, come for example back. More than thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks for the offer. Definitely, I'm going to reach out to you. All right. So before we move into trivia section, audience, here is a request to you. If you have loved this episode like I did, and if you found it useful, please share it with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues who can benefit from this show. Because the more you share, the wider we reach, and we will be closer to our mission of reaching millions across the globe. Thank you so much in advance. With that, let's hop on to the trivia segment of today's episode. And folks, today we wanted to bring you another trivia about meditation. Do you know how many people meditate? I know you're thinking, but let me tell you the secret. As per a recent global stats, it shows that across the world, between 200 and 500 million people meditate. And one stunning fact is that meditation is the second most popular mind and body practice in the United States. Interesting, isn't it? Thank you so much for tuning in. There is more in store, folks. Stay tuned. Take care. Be safe. Until next time, bye-bye. And we are signing off for today. See you all in the next episode with another wonderful guest.